Welcome to Got Grass, conversations with the legends and leaders of Bluegrass. You've enjoyed live Bluegrass at Guitar Town CT concerts in Hampton, Connecticut since 2008. From Tony Rice, Rouse Stanley, and Doyle Lawson to Tim O'Brien, Sierra Hall, and Billy Strings. Now you can go behind the scenes as we chat with your favorite Bluegrass stars. I'm your podcast host, Chris Worth. So I want to welcome Deanie Richardson to Got Grass this morning. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Good to be here.
I want to congratulate you, first of all, on your latest IBMA fiddle win.
That's my gosh, awesome. Thank you. I still am in shock and blown away. Was not expecting that at all.
Really?
Yeah, not at all.
I mean, I know you don't play to win awards, but what does that award mean to you at this point in your career?
Well, I'm 52. I've been doing this since I was 9 years old. Started playing at 9 and started traveling professionally at like 15, 16 years old. Started going to IBMA at that same time, I was a teenager. So, just I don't even remember what I said that night, but I do remember just feeling from being a kid going to that thing and watching, Stuart Duncan and Jerry Douglas and all my heroes just go up and win these awards. Never in my life did I imagine that I would be on the receiving end of one of those awards. Just never. I don't know. You just don't. I don't know. I dream big. I do dream big, but I just never thought that I would win it once and now twice. A few years later, I just am blown away. And it just means, I think, being my age and having gone through the career I've gone through, I've had a really great career, but winning something like that at this age, it just is phenomenal. Just, I don't know, you kind of feel like in this business, you got to reinvent yourself every 6 months, basically. It's kind of like technology. It's old, out with the old, in with the new,
Yeah.
So it's pretty special.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the pleasure of interviewing on this podcast Jason Carter and Bronwyn and Luke Bulla and Michael Cleveland, and it's really fun to talk to fiddle players, especially, and get their take. I think fiddle players are kind of a unique lot in bluegrass, and I enjoy hearing everyone's take on their talents and their insecurities and all this stuff, which I'm always surprised to hear. I was surprised to hear Michael Cleveland say he still worries about double stops. They're never in tune for him. I said,
"Oh my gosh, yeah, that is surprising." I feel his pain, but I never would have thought he would still worry about that sort of thing because he's a phenomenal player. He's not even. I'm not sure he's human, actually.
Yeah, right. I wonder myself. So I usually start out with a non-music question, which is, what would a perfect day off look like for you at this point?
Oh my gosh.
No music.
That's today, actually. We just played a show in Chattanooga over the weekend, and I'm raising my 8-year-old granddaughter. My daughter is an alcoholic, and I have my 8-year-old granddaughter. I've had her basically since birth. So she is out of school this week. So a perfect day off for me is beautiful here in Nashville today. There's no humidity, 72 degrees, and having a day with her, just with no plans, where we can do whatever. So that's my perfect day these days, is just getting some one-on-one time with her.
Yeah. So what is she doing now while you're on this podcast? Is she keeping herself busy?
She is. I can hear her in the next room. I teach a lot, so some days when she's home, I'm busy teaching all day. So she is very creative and finds ways to entertain herself. I heard her in there just talking to someone. I don't, there's no one in there, but she's carrying on a conversation with someone in there. I'm either worried or I'm grateful. I don't know. I'm glad she's super creative. And I also, Chris, just heard her pull out her fiddle. So I heard a little fiddle a second ago. So she's going to be busy all day doing something, but I'm sure we'll get outside here in a bit.
It must be nice to hear her play a little fiddle. I mean, for you, right?
It is. It is. She goes in spurts. You know, she'll pick it up for a bit and then put it down. She's very musical, though. It's interesting because my daughter was adopted, so my granddaughter and I are no blood kin at all, but she is super musical. And I guess, she's just grown up around it from birth, but she just goes in spurts with it, how serious she's going to get about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a my sister was an alcoholic, and so my parents raised her son from basically like the same thing from birth, just because she just was not able to
Yeah.
do anything, really take care of him, and didn't want to, and that was the end of that. It was tough, but
Well,
it
knock
worked.
up. My daughter is she's over 1,000 days sober and doing really well. So as long as that's the case, I'm really happy.
Yeah, good. I think everybody in bluegrass and country music knows who you are by now, but I still find people around here that I mention your name and they go, "Who?" So
Right.
could you give us a short little bio of your life just for to
Sure.
clear it up for those who don't know you?
Sure. I grew up. I was born here in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm what they call a unicorn because there's not many of them. It's few and far between here. Um, so I grew up here, and my parents, both my grandfathers played. My dad played. So I grew up right outside of Nashville, just about 20 minutes outside of Nashville, playing with my family, my grandparents, and going to local square dances and just, doing the thing around here. And then being that close to Nashville, I was able to get to the station inn all the time at a very young age. I'm at the station inn hearing Mark O'Connor, Jerry Douglas, Sam Bush, Bela Fleck. All those guys used to play monthly with Peter Rowan. They had this group called Crucial Country, and they played once a month at the station inn on a Thursday. I think it was the third Thursday of the month, and I was there every single time with my cassette, recording those guys and going home and learning everything Mark O'Connor did. And just that was my grandfather and my dad were very traditional Bill Monroe, but I was drawn to Mark and Jerry and Sam and Bela and that more progressive newgrass sort of thing. So I grew up listening to those guys and just completely obsessed. I'm sure they thought I was a little freak because I was just like I couldn't even speak. I'm just standing there looking at them like, oh my gosh. But
Mm.
and I still have those cassettes. Pretty crazy. So from there, I started playing some bluegrass and joined a band called the New Coon Creek Girls. I was like 15, 16 years old, started playing with those guys and toured with them for a couple of years. And then I think it was right before I turned 18, I started playing with country singer Holly Dunn. And I loved Holly's music simply because she had Mark and Jerry and Bela and all those guys playing on those records. So I was just kind of drawn to her, but and Kathy Mattea, those country guys that had all of these bluegrass greats playing on their records. So I got a gig with Holly, and I remember my first show with Holly Dunn was in Bally's in Vegas, and I wasn't even old enough to walk through the casino. I had to be escorted to the casino to get to the gig because I was under 18.
Oh man.
Yeah, so and we were opening for Conway Twitty. Oh my gosh, crazy. So anyway, I did some country thing with I did a 4 years with Holly doing country music, and then I started playing with Patty Loveless, who again, great bluegrass roots, and all of her players were bluegrass guys on a lot of her records, and just very drawn to her and her Appalachian, mountain singing. So did that, and I spent 25 years with Patty Loveless. Still to this day, we'll go play with Patty if she calls. I played on several of her records. I'm on the Grammy-winning Mountain Soul record, the bluegrass record she did. So uh, just really learned from Patty and her husband Emery Gordy Jr. how to play with a singer. Just learned so much from those guys, just about being a great fiddle player behind a singer such as Patty, whose voice is piercing, and it lands in a spot that kind of competes with the fiddle. I've learned through the years, you play with somebody like Patty Loveless, you gotta learn to stay out of the way, because I could feel when I was kind of raking on her just getting in her space.
Right.
um, versus someone like Dale Ann Bradley, where it's still Appalachian sounding, but it's a different tone, it's a different texture. So you're able to do other things. Or Vince Gill. I worked with Vince Gill, and you're able to go other places there. So anyway, just learned a lot from Patty about playing with a singer, and being a fiddle player is not just about just playing. It's about learning how to work around whatever singer you're playing with at the time. It's really important with this instrument that has no frets. It's kind of a voice in itself. So that's a tough thing as a fiddle player, I think. And in my teaching, I do a lot of harping on that, if you will.
Would you say that playing behind a singer, no matter who it is, the important thing is really to listen to the singer and try to not clash with them?
Yes, I'd say that is the fiddle player's job. When you take your solo, that's one thing. But when you're playing backup, or you're trying to add some texture to a singer, you got to learn to stay out of the way and just complement that, or add some texture to it. I like the word texture. It just you're there to add some tones, or I don't know. For me, it's just get out of the way, get out of the way, and stay in a range or a register that complements the singer rather than competes with the singer. Whereas Patty's voice is kind of middle. I think of it as you got high, you got middle, and you got low. If you think about it like that, Patty's like piercing right there through the middle. So I'm able to go up high or go low, but I need to stay out of that middle ground where she's living. Versus like a Dale Ann, who her voice tends to appear high. It's
Right.
it's it's soft and really, um, what's the word, like, not soft, but more tender, more Dolly Parton, kind of texture. So, just learning where I can live in those spaces with those singers. And then from Patty, I went on to Vince Gill. Um, and Vince had just cut that 4 CD box set where there was a bluegrass record on that. Um, and um, Getting to tour with Vince, we did country stuff, and then we did a whole bluegrass set. So I was able to be on the road with Charlie Cushman and Jeff White, um, doing those bluegrass. He actually broke the set down, and we played a bluegrass set. So from Vince, I toured with the Chieftains, played some Irish music, which is a fiddle player's dream. I mean, we literally played fiddle tunes and drank beer. It was the dream. So, but don't dare try to keep up with the Irish in the drinking part of that. I failed miserably there.
Tough one, yeah.
Anyway, so from the Chieftains to Bob Seeger, um, and I always wanted a rock and roll tour, always wanted to just experience that. I didn't know who it would be, but I knew I would do it. And Bob Seeger was a big Patty Loveless fan and had seen me out with Patty. And he's also a huge bluegrass fan. I actually heard that Bob's favorite XM channels are the blues and the bluegrass channel.
Interesting.
So Bob had me and Glenn Duncan, of all people, another fiddler.
Mhm.
Glenn and I were in the same room together recording on Bob Seger's Ride Out record. It's called Ride Out. And Glenn was playing banjo and I was playing fiddle. So there's two bluegrassers sitting in this session on a Bob Seger record. And then I went out and toured with Bob uh, for a tour to tour that record. And then from there, we started Sister Sadie. So hang on. Oh, sorry.
So we're back on. You're okay? Everything's okay there?
We're good. Yeah, my
Okay.
dog. I just heard my dog screaming out there, and I didn't know what that was.
Oh, geez. Okay.
We're good. Okay. So yeah, so what I was going to say is every person I've ever played with has had a bluegrass connection, and I felt like I was drawn to those tours and them drawn to me because of my bluegrass roots, because that was my passion. Bluegrass is my passion. It's not how I've completely made my living all these years. However, it has been a big part of everything I've ever done. And
Yeah.
every step has led me to the next one. And I've been so blessed to just play with incredible people, incredible singers, incredible musicians. I've never had to take a gig because I needed money.
Yeah.
I've only gotten gigs that I really wanted. So that's been a massive blessing.
I would say that's probably pretty unusual in bluegrass to have that much choice. I mean, most people, especially coming up, you really have to take whatever's offered. I've heard from many people that
Yeah.
you might
It's
not
it,
want to, but you needed it.
yeah, and I got offered gigs like Shania Twain or Faith Hill or all these, artists uh offered gigs, but those were not just those were not artists I was drawn to at that time. I wanted to play bluegrass music, but I also wanted to make a living. And realistically, bluegrass music is not, you know, hasn't been known to be a huge money maker. And lucky for me, I've had gigs come my way. I've not had to go seek these gigs out. They've come my way, one right after another. Just when you think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? Somebody calls or there's a knock on the door, and it's always been something I really wanted to do.
I guess there's a reason for that.
Maybe.
I mean,
I,
honestly, they're not calling you because you're not excellent and fantastic. So that's a great compliment that you're getting all those great musicians that want to play
well,
with you.
it's I have worked very hard, and it's hard for me, to not accept. It's just hard to realize, or maybe it is accept. I mean, you work hard. I practiced. I still practice. I have dreams and goals. But when somebody like a Vince Gill comes along and hires you, you know, it's just hard to fathom that you're actually good enough for that gig. It's still, even though you're playing the gig, it's still hard
Right.
to.
I've heard that from other people. I've interviewed a lot of people on this podcast because I love doing it, and I'm surprised that other people who I would not think would have any feeling like I'm not good enough to do this still sometimes feel that way. I say, "Oh my, how could that be? You're like the best guitarist I've ever heard of in my life, and yet you're still." But I guess that's, the artist, you always have that maybe moment of like, do I really belong with
Yeah,
this group or whatever?
that's
And
exactly how I felt at the awards, when they called my name. It's just, and I was backstage talking to Sam Bush, and, the fact that I'm even in a room talking to Sam Bush is just, it blows me away. So then they call my name, and it's just, it's just hard to just fall into that and accept that, and be be okay with it.
my wife and I were at IBMA last year in 2023 in Raleigh, and so we were there Saturday night for the show. And you were playing, I think, maybe with the Kruger brothers, and you were part of an ensemble up there. I mean, Jerry Douglas might have been there. And I have to say, you completely stole the show
Oh my
and
gosh.
got the biggest ovation of anybody the entire night, probably even more than Molly Tuttle. You just took it over with energy and just like there were these guys, the Krugers were sitting there playing and Jerry was playing, and then you got up there and with the fiddle, it was the energy and the excitement was just, but I guess that's what you bring. I mean, you have this persona on stage, which is very exciting. And
Well,
that was
thank you.
amazing to see. We really enjoyed that. It was,
Thank you. That was a massive highlight for me. Just, I love those guys. They're so talented. And to even, again, I'm just going to keep harping on this. To even get to be up there was unbelievable. And then Jerry was there. Yeah, that was, and I was terrified, Chris. I was terrified because, it's what we were the closing show of that night, and I'm
yeah.
up there with the Krugers and Jerry Douglas. but those guys were lovely. They were so sweet and just welcoming.
Yeah.
And I really had a great time. At the end of the night, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great.
Well, you covered your fear very well because nobody in the audience, they just thought it was like, wow. Anyway, so I wanted to get back to this. I know you played with Vince Gill, and he said at one point I saw him quoted that you were one of the few fiddlers that can play bluegrass and country well. And I was just thinking to myself, how would you describe the difference in fiddle playing for a country versus a bluegrass singer or performance? Can you put it into words, or is it complicated?
Well, I mean, it is two different styles and they do intermingle. Um, Bluegrass, I think you have more freedom, say in a bluegrass band situation, the Krugers or a Sister Sadie or whomever you might be playing with, there's more freedom to explore, experiment, step out on a limb, improv. Whereas a country thing, you know, you, you might get a little section you're gonna fill, and then you're gonna have maybe a turnaround. It's just there's never that room to really go use your brain or explore some deep solo where you're playing around a couple of times or whatever. Now with Vince, there might be because he's a player, he's a musician. But we still normally on those situations, you stick to the record, you play, the parts that were played on the record. And I also really study the kind of player or singer that I'm with. Like, I also get to play in the staff band at the Grand Ole Opry, um, where you're playing for everyone that comes up that night. So you really have to be a player who can play Jeannie Seely, swing country or Tommy Jackson style, old school, heart over mind, you know. Go ahead.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, where you have to be able to do anything. And then, Charlie McCoy comes out and plays uh, the South's gonna do it again. So those type situations have put me in a spot where I have to be on my toes and I really have to know not just, the Bluegrass Album Band or, Merle Haggard, but you also got to know what there's Charlie Daniels and there's, I've just been through this plethora of music throughout my career and studied and heard so much music. I really um am able to cross over into those genres. And I think that's
Yeah.
what Vince is speaking of.
Right. So let's say you're in a bluegrass band performing and you're about to take a solo. What are you thinking of? Like, what's your approach to a solo? Like, all right, they've been through the head and the chorus, verse and chorus, and now it's solo time. What are you thinking about?
Um,
I'm just thinking about I teach a couple of bluegrass classes at intermediate up here, and I have a fiddle player, and just wondering how you would advise them to like conceive of a solo.
yeah, well first, I I I want to hear the melody in my solo, so I'm going to start there where you can at least tell what I'm playing starting off. You're going to hear those first few pieces of melody throughout the solo. You're going to hear pieces of that melody. And then, my thought process, and this is how I teach improv um, to more advanced students, is I find obvious improv spots. Okay, so I'm thinking, where's a safe place for me to throw in a Scotty Stoneman lick or a Bobby Hicks or my fiddle's right there. I just almost grabbed it. Like where's an obvious spot? It might be where, we go 1 4 1 5, where it lands on that five. That seems like an obvious spot for me to grab a, one of those sort of deals.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, where is an obvious improv spot? That's one thought I have. Um, and then, I might, and sometimes I find myself doing this. I might, oh, what would Bobby do, or what would Stuart do, or it just depends on the mood I'm in, really, where I want to take that solo. I'm thinking about the chord changes, but I believe, and this is how I teach, that we have this vocabulary of licks they're stored up here. Okay, so um, through all my years of and you and I are old enough to know that we had to move a record needle back and forth to learn a solo, whereas these kids today have YouTube and slow downer. But I remember taking that record needle and learning, what my favorite fiddle players were doing. So that's where I stored all those licks, and now I am pulling from all those licks to form a solo. So I call them generic licks, money licks. Those are your money licks. So there's money licks up there. There's my Scotty Stoneman, my Bobby Hicks, my Stuart Duncan. There's all these things I've got stored. And now I just pull from them without even thinking about it a whole lot. But first and foremost is going to be, what is this melody, and where is a good landing spot for me to throw something really tasteful and really cool in?
Yeah, I was wondering about that, the idea of thinking about a solo versus just playing a solo.
Yeah,
'Cause obviously you don't want to get caught up too much in your mind, right? You want to be able to just play it, but
yeah,
your brain is supplying you with all this information. And I mean, when you think about it, it's very complicated, and it comes out sometimes so simple and logical, but
it
there's so many
is.
things that could factor into a good solo.
That's a good point. And I was just thinking, like, the energy of the people you're playing with could determine how I'm gonna approach that solo. If there's a shaky rhythm section and we're not solid, I'm gonna stay pretty close to home, and I'm not gonna branch out because I won't find my way back percussively. Um, and then I'm thinking a couple things I ask myself, and I teach this is this a pretty melodic tune, or is this a B capo 4 Ralph Stanley mash sort of, what does this tune need from me? What can I bring to this tune? So I'm always going to try to honor that as well.
I was talking to Jason Carter about his chop technique, and he said, "I have no idea what I do." He said, during COVID, I started teaching more, and I was having a hard time figuring out how to explain my chop because I don't really know how I do it or what I do. You
Yeah.
know, I guess a lot of musicians that just learned by playing, which most bluegrass musicians did, when it comes time to try to teach it, it's sometimes hard to because it's so instinctive. You've just been doing it since you were six, but when you have
Yeah.
to think about it, it's like, well, what am I actually doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think teaching for me, I learned so much from teaching. There's not a week that goes by that I don't go, oh, there's another piece to this massive musical equation that I
Mhm.
just figured out from teaching this person. I think teaching has really helped me to really break my playing down and do those things like Jason was describing, just like we do this instinctively, but actually, how do I do it? So teaching has really helped me with that.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit and talk about Daly Bradley because she's played up here a lot, and I just find her to be. I mean, I know she's just an amazing singer and guitarist, but she's the most genuine person I think I've ever met in my life.
It
She
is
just makes
great.
everybody feel like they're her best friend, and she would do anything for you. I've been trying to get her on the podcast. She says I have an old phone and I can't figure it out, and so
That
far,
is true too.
so far we haven't been able to figure it out. But hopefully we will.
When she was a member of Sister Sadie,
Right.
we had this group text, and she could never just figure out how to respond, or she's always had difficulties with that. But I played with Deland the first time she joined the New Concrete Girls as one of the lead singers. So that's when I first got to play with her. We were both very young, and then when Sister Sadie started, we played together again. I'd done some records and stuff on and off with her throughout the years, but actually doing the Sister Sadie band together was the longest stint of time we played together. And she is one of the rarest, most beautiful gems of this earth. I will say she's just the purest form of of vocal abilities and just humanity in general. She's just the best. Can't say
I mean,
enough good.
it comes through in her singing because it's just I don't know how you were trying to describe it, tender, or it
Yeah,
just connects with you on a very
it is.
one-to-one level.
But it's also, you can also feel the heartbreak and the pain and the
Yes.
just the Appalachian influences and the Dolly Parton influences. It's just I don't know. She's just a very beautiful, beautiful thing that we all have gotten to experience for sure.
Yeah. So your band, Sister Sadie, I didn't realize how long you've been together. You've been together for quite a long time.
It'll be 13 years in December.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you've had some major personnel shifts, but the band you have now seems to be really rocking it.
Yeah, this is a good combo. We started the band 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago, obviously, at the Station Inn, just a group of women who had never played together in that configuration, but we all knew each other because we were all about the same age and we had all known each other throughout festivals and traveling. And we said, what if we just got together and just went and did some trio songs or whatever and had a good time at the Station Inn? We did that. And Chris, from that first downbeat, we played and we just all looked at each other and we were like, oh my gosh, this feels like nothing I've ever felt before, really. And it really did. So we did that night and then said we should do another and did another and then started getting calls for some shows. Oh, let's go do a few shows. So we did a few shows and then we got a call from a record label. Y'all should do a record. So we went and did a record and then we did another one. We got nominated for a Grammy. And all of this is happening just organically because at this point in my life, I've, I've got so much other stuff going on. I'm committed to about 4 or 5 different things. Dell Ann is doing her thing. Gina's working at a bank. Tina works at Belmont. It was never anything we wanted to do seriously or even thought. We were just having a good time.
Yeah.
And it just organically started growing and these things started happening and then we get a little more serious about it and then Delanne, left and then we were like, do we want to keep doing this? You know, who do you replace Delanne Bradley with? So we brought in Jaylee Roberts and then Tina Adair left. And after that, Gina and I were, and Beth was already gone. So after that was just me and Gina were the original members. And we had a long, hard conversation. Do we really want to keep doing this or is it time to just call it? And we decided we were just going to plow ahead and see what happened. But let's really try. What if we put in some effort instead of just seeing what happened? So we have brought in these young girls and brought in a team of people. We have management, we have booking agents. We were doing all that ourselves, all of it. And we have a great social media team. So we really got serious about it. And now it's just blossoming on another level. But, every time you have a personnel change, you have a different energy shift and you have all these, you got, like I said, you got to reinvent, you got to rebuild this thing. And now we have a new singer, so we got to redo the harmonies. And now there's a new mandolin player and we got to, what is that going to feel like? So it changes drastically every time you bring in someone new. And fortunately, where we are now with Maddie, Dalton, Rainey, Miatka, Danny Flowers, Jaylee Roberts, myself, and Gina Britt, it is the best combo that we've had. The energy is just on fire. And I got to tell you, honestly, with raising my granddaughter, being 52 years old, had this career that I've had, I was not looking, I've beat the road up my whole life. And I was not looking to raise a child that I was not planning on having and still touring like that. So I was kind of just cool to do a few dates and be done. But honestly, with this new configuration and these women, the energy, I'm so fired up about music again. I'm so fired up about this. And we are having so much fun. I'm writing so much. Danny and I have been writing a ton of tunes with amazing writers here. And, Jaylee's career is doing great. It's just great. So I'm going to ride this thing as long as we can ride it and see what happens. It's really
Yeah.
good. I'm having a
Yeah.
great time. I'm literally love these ladies so much. Um, we have a great time together. There's 50, Gina and I are 52 and Maddie is 20. So there's 20, 21, 23, 35, and 52. Those are our age gaps. And here's the beautiful thing about this. I got to say this. There's all these age differences. There's all these religious and political beliefs that are different, completely different. And we love each other tremendously and we respect each other tremendously and we have the best time. And I'm like, you know what? If 7 women out on the road can do this, why can't the whole entire freaking country?
Well, that brings me up to a question I was going to ask you. That I mean, I think of music as one of the last things in our culture that actually brings people together. There's so much that divides us. Do you look at music as kind of like a healing together thing, or I mean, ideally?
I totally do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And what I just said there, it's like no matter what any of us are going through, no matter if we agree or if we disagree or if we're disappointed in one another, I mean, the music that we make together and the goals that we have tie us all together and we are completely committed to that and to one another and we show up for each other and we love each other and the music is that bond. That's what does it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know a couple of people I've met through the years in bluegrass who I do not discuss politics with, but
Sure.
I know that I shouldn't discuss politics with them.
Exactly.
And
And yeah, so
but
let's not, right?
no, let's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that ever come up in a recording session or something with where you're playing with somebody whose politics are very different than yours, and you have to kind of just bite your tongue and play? Is that
All the time.
it does? Yeah, I
All
would
the time.
imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I live in Nashville, Tennessee and I grew up here. It's the South and I, it's definitely been a tough thing. It's definitely been a hard thing for me. I'm not afraid to say I am a gay woman here in the South and openly gay woman and I definitely lean more to the left and my environment around me tends to be more to the right and um, I'm okay with that. I think I don't know if you can see my hat, but I'm not going to say it on the podcast. That's my motto right there.
Well, it says don't be a dick. It's okay. We can say that's not worse things have been said.
Says don't be a dick. That's right. So we can all disagree, but let's be kind to one another.
Yeah. Do you think music and art is political by nature? I mean, do you think, I mean, a lot of musicians try to kind of walk this fine line and not get into politics. Some, like the Dixie Chicks, who I admire greatly, got
Sure.
into it and said what they thought, and God bless them for doing it. They were really blacklisted. And so, do you think politics and music kind of are one and one by nature?
I really do, honestly. I mean, I think you know, I think we write songs based on our experiences in our life. Uh the sometimes the you know that's a tough thing. I don't want to dig too deep in that because some of our band members don't agree, and I don't want to ever put them in a situation where they're uncomfortable. But I am also going to be, I'm not afraid to say what I feel and how I believe. I'm not going to dislike anyone who or you know wish they didn't weren't fans of Sister Sadie or my music because they don't agree with me politically or personally. Um, I have never had an issue. I will say this. I am a woman in bluegrass and country music, and I've had a great career. I am an openly gay woman in bluegrass and country music, and I've had a great career. So either I'm a badass or um, I've gotten all those gigs, without people knowing my personal life. You know what I mean? It's like all those people knew who I am and they hired me anyway. So I don't feel like I can be one of those people that says I've never gotten a gig because I'm gay. Now I'm sure there are people out there who have not hired me because of that. And guess what? I probably don't want to play with them anyway. So that's all good for me.
I mean, I don't know you very well. I feel like I know you much better, and I feel like you probably are a bit of a badass, and you're also an amazing player. So, I mean, that's going to get you far, I think, in the world
Well,
of music.
I'm not afraid to be who I am. And also on the other side of that, I don't go out advertising it either. You know what I
Right.
mean? Everybody knows or you don't know. I'm not wearing a rainbow on my hat. I'm wearing a don't be a dick on my hat. So
Right.
I'm just going to go play music and I'm going to bring my A game and 100% every freaking time. And that's either enough or it's not.
Yeah. I'm talking to Jason Carter and Bronwyn about obviously they're getting married. I don't think they're married yet, but they're getting married. They both play a fiddle and they're doing some duo shows. Is there anybody that you would enjoy doing a duo show with or do duo shows with?
Yeah, that's funny. I've been talking about this recently. I One of my favorite fiddlers to twin fiddle with is Kimber Ludiker.
Oh, yeah.
And I love Kimber to pieces. And we have been toying with this idea of doing a record together. So that's kind of in the works. And I've never officially announced that. So I just did it right here. But we're going to work on that. And I have this, I don't know, I just did a record or played on a couple of records with Kristen Scott Benson. And for me, I just freaking love her. I love playing with her. She brings out something in my playing that I really want to explore more. Just a fiddle banjo situation. Um, yeah, so those are just two things that have passed by my radar recently. And I also love Alison Brown. I would like to do more things with her.
Hmm.
I just did a couple of things in the studio with her, but I mean, those are all women. Ironically, it's not because I chose it like that. It's just things I've come across lately that I really want to explore a little more.
So going back through the history of bluegrass music, is there anybody that you would have enjoyed performing with or sitting down and jamming with for a couple of hours that, from the 40s on through the 2020s, any special?
Bluegrass.
Yeah.
Well, right,
Or country. I mean, I'm just thinking of somebody that would be a
well,
hero of yours that you would have loved to just kind of sat down in the living room and
I will say, because I grew up loving the more progressive playing of Mark O'Connor, Jerry Douglas, all those guys. I didn't really study Kenny Baker. I got to see Kenny play many times because I lived here in Nashville, but I didn't really study his playing until COVID.
uh
And during COVID, I kind of went back and did the thing I wish I'd have done as a kid, just hit the Bobby Hicks and the Kenny Bakers early on, the Benny Martins, those guys who I knew all of them growing up because I just saw them a lot around here. John Hartford used to have these parties at his house, and I'd go over there as a kid, and all of these guys would just be jamming everywhere throughout John Hartford's house. And just very lucky to have grown up here. But I would say Kenny Baker, if I could sit down and just pick his brain a minute, I would love to know why he did certain things the way he did them. But I also would love to just maybe spend a little time with Tommy Jackson. I just think he was brilliant. Now, one of my favorites of all time is Howdy Forster. And I got to spend some time with Howdy and really loved his playing too. So those would be three that if I could just sit down and hang out with.
Yeah. You might remember we had a concert, a benefit back in 2014 to raise money for Tony Rice when everybody heard that he was broke and having a hard time. And I think you considered coming because I asked you, but you couldn't come. Did you ever have any dealings with Tony in terms of music performance or because he was always my hero in bluegrass, and I
Yeah.
just wondered if you ever got a chance to hang with him or
Oh
play with him.
yeah. We're all massive Tony Rice fans. Those records were heavy, heavy in rotation when I was growing up. The Manzanita record, um, you know, I was again not a huge listener of Vassar even as a kid, um, more so now, but his playing on all those records it's just incredible. Um, but back to your question, we named Sister Sadie after little Sadie, after the Tony Rice tune.
Yeah.
So we are massive Tony Rice fans. Now um I have played with Tony in a setting, but it was like a everybody on stage at the end of a situation and play. It was never I actually did a set with Tony, but I did hear Tony a lot and completely obsessed, as we all are, yes.
Yeah. Um, let's see. I was going to ask you about this. Have you ever been discouraged in the business enough that you maybe thought of doing something else or like had any kind of setback and said, well, this is really not what I want to do anymore? Or are you pretty much just going right through from A to B and not thought about that?
No, there's been definitely times of um and it's mostly been times of uncertainty about what's coming next and just trying to make ends meet
Mhm.
with the gigs and financially, there's a winter coming. Oh my gosh. The winters are always hard on us musicians because the festival seasons are over and everything kind of shuts down. January and February, December are just brutal for a lot of us. So there's been those times, many times of just, oh my gosh, I wish I just had a regular job where I could not stress so much about paying the bills. So that's one thing that's been discouraging throughout the years. And um, you know, I don't know if I would call myself a late bloomer, but I feel like
So I hit a
yeah,
button by mistake.
that's okay. I don't know if I'd call myself a late bloomer, but I feel like at 52, my career is on fire
Mm.
as opposed to in my 20s and 30s, even. I just feel more creative. I feel more passionate about it. Um, you know, and maybe that's because it's my gig versus me playing fiddle for someone, you
Yeah.
know, and I get to make the set list and I get to create the arrangements of the tunes and I get to produce the records, so I am severely more creative and excited about music. So I don't feel like I don't live in that spot anymore of I wish I did something else or I wish I could do something else, but definitely early on, just the financial burden of worrying about taking care of a kid and
Right.
keeping the bills paid.
Did you ever actually take another job to supplement your music income, or did you pretty much stuck to music?
I have mostly done music my whole life. I did have a summer where I helped some friends of mine work at a nursery growing some plants and I absolutely loved it because I love growing things.
Yeah.
But no, I've been a musician my whole and I've never waited tables and never had to do anything else. I've been very, very blessed
Yeah.
with the gigs I've had. And the only other thing I would say is just being gone from a kid. I missed every birthday she ever had. Her birthday was June 13th, and that's like massive touring time. And then my granddaughter is June 29th. So,
Oh, geez.
but I now have the booking agent knows, the band knows I am not touring that weekend. I'm just not
Yeah.
doing it. So
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah. So you don't live in Nashville proper right now. You live out of town, out
I'm
of.
right outside. I'm near where I grew up. I
Oh,
am
you
about
are.
15 minutes from where I grew up. Meadow is my granddaughter. She's dyslexic and has some learning disabilities. So I'm in a Williamson County school, which is a really good school district right outside of Nashville, um, so that she can get what she needs
Yeah.
for school. Yeah.
Yeah. So how these days, what role does Nashville play in the music world? Could you just kind of summarize that? I mean, I know Nashville is Nashville, and everybody knows Nashville, but like, has its role changed over the years with the change in music and stuff, or is it still a necessity to be in Nashville?
I don't think it's a necessity anymore. I think if you're here, you want to be here
Mm,
because of the scene. I mean, um, there's still a quotation Nashville scene, that is country, you know, your top 40 Nashville, which I'm not a part of anymore. And we just don't play that kind of music, and I'm not a big fan of that kind of music. So that's just not my thing. So, but there is also a Nashville. The Nashville I grew up in was what I explained to you earlier. It was really cool. It was great. It was, I'm sitting here looking at a picture of myself at the station inn with Roland White, and I mean, I
oh,
was,
nice.
yeah, and Gene Wooten right there.
Yeah.
I was a kid, so I grew up in a time when I called Nashville really cool.
Yeah.
It was really good to be here before the TV show, before the tourism just got stupid, before Broadway was, you couldn't even move down there, before Kid Rock and everybody had a bar. It was, it was a fun, cool place to be. Now, with that said, there is a whole Nashville now that is young, East Nash grass, really great frickin' players and old time players. There's a whole massive old time scene. The Station Inn is still thriving. So there is a very cool part of Nashville now that's happened in the last 5, 6 years that you definitely uh, want to be a part of. It's a good energy. It's very creative. It's very young. It's very fresh, and it's a cool part of Nashville again for sure.
Yeah. That must seem good for you. I mean, Nashville, I probably needed a little bit of new a new
Yeah.
blood. I mean, I think it got kind of stale, and as you say, the country music thing became just, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not denigrating any country singers, but it's just, it's really just plug it in and off they go. It's not that interesting, most of it.
No, the chord changes are all the same. The melodies are all the same. It's definitely not fun. It's not a player's music. You don't enjoy. Well, I don't enjoy playing that stuff. Um, However, sometimes we do. Uh, it's just not a creative thing that's fun for really great players to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it goes through its phases, and I feel like there's a new one coming. Actually, I feel like the Dixie Chicks, the '90s country, the Patty Loveless, those things that were great about that time, I feel like are coming back. So there's going to be this cool part of it again. I feel like, I hope anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
more fiddles and steel guitars. You know,
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. So looking back at your career, is there anything you would change or wish you had done differently, or are you pretty happy with everything the way it's turned out?
well, I think it's all lined itself up as it was intended. I wish
Hmm.
I had have felt this creative energy in my 20s. I had a pretty shitty childhood, not a not so great dad, and I had a lot of growing up and a lot of therapy to do before I could really settle into this space I'm in right now and really be authentically myself and creative and feel safe enough to do so. He was very critical, and which is probably why I never felt good enough or still don't. that's a hard thing to grow up with. But I wish I'd have had that space and that freedom that I feel now early on, and seen what I could have done with that.
Yeah. Yeah. What's it like playing with Bob Seeger? I was just like,
He's great.
yeah,
He's just a true class act. He's like Del Ann for me. He's just a class act. He's a true, genuine human being. Patty Loveless was, Vince Gill was. I have been so lucky to work for just amazing people, not just talented people, but amazing people. And Bob is so musical, Chris. He was so inspiring just to be on stage with and to be in the studio with. He would come out, we would go do a take, and we'd come out into the control room. He would sit at the control booth uh, and make the engineer leave, and he would start moving faders, and his hands are in the air, and he's just so musical. It's so contagious to be around somebody who just loves it so much. And
yeah.
you just hear every single note. You start taking in every single note, and it's just a whole different way to listen. It's a whole different way to play when you're with somebody like that.
Yeah. It's funny because when you think of the great songwriters of the 20th century and early 21st, you think of Bob Dylan and Paul Simon and, Paul McCartney. But I think Bob Seeger is right up there as one of the great songwriters of all time. I mean,
Yeah.
listen to his work, it all of his songs are so great and distinctive and have a melody that's you
Um,
remember in the lyric and it says something. I don't think he's ever really gotten his due as a
yeah.
songwriter in America.
I agree. No, I agree. And I loved his melodies. It was a great show. He had a massive band. We had a great time. I didn't play on every song. I just played on the few that I played on the record on. So I
Mhm.
got to sit there and listen most nights and just observe. And he, for me, was just, I like I said, I always wanted a rock and roll tour. I was thinking, Bonnie Raitt. I'm like, okay, who could I go out with? But when Bob Seger called and then I went out and I was like, I'm supposed to be right here because he's teaching me so much right now. He's
Yeah.
just
Wow.
eat up with it. He literally, it's oozing out of him music and he loves it so much.
Yeah. Wow. That's encouraging to hear because he's been at it a long time and he's still like you,
Yeah.
still you're still pushing it out and loving it.
Yeah.
It really shows in the music.
Yeah, and he's not afraid to lower the keys and not trying to be something he can't do anymore. I love that about the artist I've worked with. You know, life comes and you get older and the vocal cords change and let's bring what we can bring. And
Right.
he brings it every single night. It's just wringing wet with sweat and just I don't know, something about him really influenced me and taught me a lot about just bringing your A game every night no matter what.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. This is a non-music question. You've kind of already answered it, but what would people be surprised to learn about you? Is there anything I mean, you've already talked so much about yourself and your life and your upbringing
Yeah.
that I don't know, is there anything people would be surprised to hear that you
Surprised. I love to cook.
love to
I
cook?
don't know. My thing every night, if I could just cook something with a glass of wine, that's my unwind. That's how I love to spend the end of my day. Just I love to cook. I love to grow my own food. Uh, I had a little farm and had some chickens and organic gardens. I love that. That's my just grounding and getting back to the real authentic me, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you there. We have a small yard up here and we have a flower garden and a vegetable garden that takes up most of it. And I also love to cook, so that's one of my passions is just going to the garden and get something and
I love it.
yeah, it's great.
That's the best.
So if you had a week off with nothing to do, no gigs, no recording, you're just gonna would you be with your granddaughter hanging around the farm or what would you be doing? like your ideal
Yeah,
week off?
I guess. I don't do off time well. I'm a type A, let's go
Mhm.
100% all the time. So it's hard for me to imagine a week of that. I would probably
Yeah.
get anxious
Let's
and
give you a long weekend. How about that?
yeah, I would definitely want to do something with her. I love uh being out west. I love the mountains in Colorado. You know, I love that side of the country. So if I could do one thing or pick one thing, it would probably just be go hang out there for a bit and fish, get in the water. I like to I like to just be outside and throw a line in the water or something.
Yeah, right. Well, the hour and plus has gone by pretty fast.
It did.
Anything else you'd like to add to this conversation before we close out? It's been interesting hearing about you. Most of the stuff you told me I did not know about yourself, so and I'm sure our listeners will be interested in hearing. And yeah,
Oh, I'm
I
good.
hope to see you up here sometime playing. I don't know if you don't get up here too often, but
No,
it's
no, I
kind of
would
a
love
haul
that
for
though. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm good. I think I spilled it all.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you, Deanie, and again, I congratulate you for all your success with the band and the fiddle, and seems like you're in a happy spot in your life right now and full of energy, and so congratulations on all that, and thanks for chatting.
Thank you for having me. It's
Appreciate it,
been
and
fun.
maybe catch you in person someday down the road.
Would love that. Let's
Okay,
catch
I'm going to
up soon.
turn off the recording here. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast, and thanks for listening. Visit our website, guitartownct.com, for concert and podcast schedules, or just to send us a message. We'd love to hear from you.